Hi, my name is John Garfield. This is the Releasing Kings newsletter. It's January 29th, 2017. This week, I want to just chat with you a minute about going from grace to competence. Most of us carry a sort of a concept that grace is how we get saved, and doesn't include any works. But grace is really much more than that, and it has three basic definitions. At the end of the newsletter, I've got a link to a message that John Bevere did on grace, and I recommend that you take 30 minutes and listen to that. That thing touched my heart and inspired this particular blog. But grace is not just fire insurance for heaven. It's a key ingredient God uses to build his kingdom and bless nations through us right now. So the first definition, one, we are saved and sanctified by grace through faith, and that's not of works. That's sort of the evangelical definition. The second one is we have access to spiritual gifts and ministries by the grace on our lives, or the gifts in our lives. And that's the charismatic definition. There's 9 spiritual gifts, 9 ministry gifts, Ephesians 4, 11, 12 gifts. And the third definition is that we are each empowered and called or uniquely graced to be extraordinary in our mountain. And the third aspect of grace that touches competence and empowers us to make a difference in our mountain or in our job or business. We should stand out and do greater works, both prophetically, practically, and miraculously, because our Father's working through us. We see this clear connection with grace in the excellence we work with, the wisdom, the stature, the promotion, the favor with God of men. It even winds its way into finances, all flowing from the grace that's on our lives. Once we know it exists, 2 things happen. One, we can expect that we can do greater things, and we're not surprised when they happen. The phenomenal, or the feeling of doing something sort of like playing above your head is an amazing phenomenon. I've personally experienced that a lot, and it's the grace of God. All you can do when you go home is, sort of shed tears before the Lord, and on your pillow thank him for what he did through you. And it's fun. It's a party. The second aspect is that when we develop an awareness of grace in those around us, we can recognize it and release it in other people. Listen to Daniel 6, 3 and 4. Then this Daniel began distinguishing himself among the commissioners and satraps because he possessed an extraordinary spirit, and the king planned to appoint him over the entire kingdom, all because of the grace that he was functioning in. Jerusalem was captive. He was hauled back to Persia, served this foreign king. His life was not going as planned at all, but the grace still bubbled up to the surface and carried him through that all the way to promotion. Luke 2:40 and verse 52. This is about Jesus. The child grew and became strong. He was filled with wisdom, and the grace of God was upon him. And Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and men. So there's a graphic about getting connected with the kingdom that I want you to take a look at. What we do affects our profession, our vocation, our passion, and our mission. And we converge with our heart's desire. On one hand, we develop the wisdom to do what the Father's doing as another aspect, and we connect with the purpose that he has on our lives. And lastly, we connect with a competence that allows grace to operate, or his wind begins to fill our sails. That's what makes a practical difference in your job or business or whatever it is you're doing in this life. So Jesus revealed in our hearts is what grace really is. It helps to see the goal. His grace in us and through us shows up in extraordinary people doing greater works. And sure, we're not saved by works, but once we are saved, the most fun thing in this life is doing what the Father's doing. Jesus said, my Father's working, so am I. And it's wisdom to work with the Father. That's just wisdom. Charis, the Greek word for grace, means the divine influence upon the heart and its reflection in the life, including gratitude. So grace is both internal and external, and grace is very evident in people who flow with it. It shines, it empowers, it feels like the wind of God is in our sails. It doesn't matter whether other people can recognize it, whether they're saved or unsaved. And we can sense Him working with us in the power and authority that goes beyond, way beyond our natural ability. And doors open, people respond in ways that surprise us and amaze us. And we converge with our own hearts and original design when we touch our kingdom purpose. Extraordinary people who distinguish themselves with confidence and wisdom are very prone to reign in life, very prone to be more than conquerors. They survive the challenges and have the favor and promotion of God and men. That's the practical ramification of walking in the grace that God has uniquely given to you and I. Listen to Romans 5:17. How much more will those who receive God's abundant provision of grace and of the gift of righteousness reign in life through this one man, Jesus? And in Ephesians 3:20, now to Him is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to His power that works within us. So let me just explain one little key. We step into grace and walk in that level of power when we take initiative. When we get the land we step on, and it takes that step of initiative to function in grace. Colossians 1:24, to them God has chosen to make known among the Gentiles the glorious riches of this mystery. What is it? Which is Christ in you, the hope of glory. That's the whole mystery. That's the key that opens the door to the kingdom for each of us. So how to get there? Now here's a tricky little part of this newsletter. Got a great graphic, two great graphics in this newsletter, so I want you to take a look at it. The full expression of Jesus' grace that empowers us takes this winding path through the fellowship of His suffering. It's a path that goes through failure and deaths and resurrections, which only makes sense in hindsight. And there's no shortcut around the brokenness that leaves a humble fragrance of His grace in our lives. That in the end, it makes us much stronger. Think of Joseph being sold into slavery, Daniel being taken into captivity, David, being a king, having his kingdom taken away, getting it back again, Jesus, Paul, Peter. They all went through huge challenges, huge obstacles, and we all go through the same. It's this death resurrection. So we're not just thankful in difficulties, we're delighting in them for Jesus' sake, because they make us stronger and wiser. And it's a privilege to be entrusted with trials and resistance or warfare. Nothing else can deepen our hearts. Nothing else can cause us to touch the grace that's really on our lives. And it strengthens our trust, and it raises our stature before God. Nothing changes us like death and resurrection. That personal experience of overcoming, going through something very difficult and coming out the other side. So 1 Corinthians 12:9-10, this is a graphic in the newsletter. Take a look at it. My grace is sufficient for you. This empowerment is sufficient for you. For my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That's why, for Christ's sake, I can delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, and in difficulties. For when I'm weak, that's when I'm strong. Amen? So I just want to encourage you that grace is what gets us through. It's the awareness that Jesus is in us and goes before us and empowers us to be more than conquerors. We know that grace, that purpose, and we have that sense of destiny that eventually leads to glory. And we're going to paper the walls with it. We're going to fill the earth with His glory. And that extraordinary spirit, that stature that has favor before God and men, God has that for you. God has it for all of us. And I want to encourage you to step into it. Take the initiative to step into the fullness of the grace that God has on your life. Have a great week. Take a look at the newsletter on the web. There's a link to that message by John Bevere. It's worth 30 minutes. Have a great week. God bless.